Okay, so as someone with a small wrist, I wanted to share why I love Casio watches and also why sometimes it can be well, a little bit frustrating. So I want to give 3 reasons why I really like Casio watches as someone with a small wrist in particular. Maybe these reasons go beyond just having a small wrist. And also 3 things that are just super frustrating. Maybe hate is the wrong word, but mostly just frustrating as someone who really enjoys watches and enjoys collecting these Casios. So the first reason why I really love Casio watches is the affordability and the value. And those are 2 separate things, and I'll just briefly talk about what I think that means. I like that Casio has a spectrum of watches at different price points. So for example, you got a watch like this, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. You got a watch like this, very, very cheap, very affordable, and really good value for what you're paying for. And as a consumer, I really like that. Then you get watches like this one, right? A little bit more expensive, but still, I think you get a lot for what you're paying for. Again, just as good a value, even though their price points are very different. I feel like it's a very good value. As my collection has sort of grown over time, I noticed that for me, the sweet spot with Casios in particular is probably about that $100 to $150 range, but I do know it does go higher. You know, there's a good range, but that's what I like. If I want to maybe cheap out and get like a cheaper watch, then there's a lot of options available. Particularly this one. I don't know. This one's just. Yeah, I'll make a video about this, but I'm starting to like this one a little bit more as I own it more and wear it more. But there's also the cheap stuff and there's also the more expensive stuff. Not that I have too much expensive stuff, but I know that as I grow as a watch collector, I'll have more of a variety of certain price points. I have looked at the Oceanus line, which I think those watches are absolutely amazing for Casio. Not very popular maybe in the whole watch world, but whew, boy, if you love blue, they got the colors for you. It's a nice lineup and something that I hope to one day acquire maybe 1 or 2 pieces in that line. But until then, just sort of moving around in some of the different sub brands, I guess you could say, for Casio. And also because of the various price points, like I mentioned with this watch and this watch, I think you get a lot of great value. You can decide how much watch you need, and there's probably a good option for most people. And when it comes to value and affordability, it's people just think cheap, right? And Casio, oh, it's just a cheap watch. And sure, some of them do happen to be fairly cheap, but what you're getting for the price, I feel like for the most part across the board, it's fairly good. I mean, you take a watch like this one, it's a dive watch, it's nice, solar, good water resist, has a day of the week. Let me put that closer. Yeah, I think, you know, under $100, I think that's pretty awesome. And again, because they have a variety, I love the fact that you can get something as simple as quartz with just basic stopwatch features. Of course, good lume, good light. Oh, this one's so good. I don't know if you can tell. Such a good light on this one. And then you get something with, you know, solar, sapphire crystal, and you got multi-band 6. It's like, what more really could you ask for in a watch like this? Now, frustrating point number 1 for me is availability, especially with the JDM models, something like these ones, or this one. I think this is the M100, this is the lineage models. These are great watches. I have no idea why they don't bring them more to the US. You got to get them online, but I've got these in Japan, so that was really nice. But sometimes it can be very frustrating as someone who likes Casio to want to be able to collect certain watches because you just can't get them. I mean, even like this G-Shock, right? Picked this up recently, and you can't pick it up in the US. It's not available. Would love to get it here locally, but you can't. So you got to order it online and hope that it arrives okay. Now, I do plan on traveling to Japan quite a bit, and I'm sure on those travels I will be able to get a wide variety of Casio stuff when I'm there. But you know, for models like this, yeah, it's kind of hard to get, and I understand it maybe it's a marketing standpoint. We're only certain watches are located in certain areas. But as someone who likes to collect watches, especially Casio ones, and they have so many watches, sometimes I just wish that there was a Casio store or a catalog and you could just order any watch you wanted and it would just ship to you from some location. There's also certain watches that are discontinued from Casio that I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish they had them. The Casio Beside series comes to mind. I mean, those are some nice looking watches. I wish that they were available. They were pretty reasonably priced, and the look of those watches, oh, looks so nice. But now you can't get them, and it's too bad because, again, they created a nice product, but here in the US, even you look eBay, hard to find. But you know, frankly, in the end, it probably saves me a lot of money because I can't just get any watch that I see online, that it is sort of region locked, at least for a while. But still, as someone who likes watches, collects watches, it would be nice if it was more readily available. Now, second reason why I love Casio as a brand is the quality of the watches. The quality I found and the reliability of quartz and what Casio packages together, to me, absolutely amazing. And that consistency, I appreciate it very much as a consumer. It's like anytime I get a Casio, I know it's not going to be like a dud. All right, now frustrating reason number 2. Here we go. Small wrist options for men are actually quite limited in my opinion. This is the reason why I went with this G-Shock, not just because it was new and it looked cool, but because it was smaller. And most of the G-Shocks for men are humongous. And on a 6¼ inch wrist, I just don't want to wear a watch that is humongous. Some guys are more comfortable with that. For me, I want something a little sleeker, and they're just not a lot of options, particularly when it comes to like G-Shocks or some of the more outdoor rugged watches, divers. I mean, that's the reason why I went with this one. All right, I mean, the Dura would be nice, but it's too big, so I had to go small, and this is small. So there's just not a lot of options for men when it comes to, quote, men's watches. And what I'm trying to do with my collection is sort of step over that line and check out what's sort of in the women's section, or I should say, the watches that are traditionally marketed towards women. So like, good example is this G-Shock. Of course, I would love to have the classic G-Shock Casio men's one, and I did try it on. It was just a little bit too big. I mean, I was surprised that it fit me okay. It wasn't as big as I thought, especially when you go based on the measurements. It wasn't that big, but I just felt like it was a little bit too big. And so I went with the women's G-Shock. This is the metal one. I went with the women's G-Shock version, and I think it fits my wrist a whole lot better. Again, at 6¼ inch, I think this feels better. It looks more natural, and I just wish that they would take some of the larger watches that they have, traditionally larger watches, and just like shrink them down a little bit. You know, it's like, not everybody has a 7-inch plus wrist, and not everybody wants to wear a big watch. Some people want to wear something a little bit more subtle, and I wish that they had more options. But if they don't, then that's why I'm gonna probably continue looking at some of the traditionally women's watches. All right, now let me mention reason number 3. I love the fact that they come out with new styles and new watches all the time, whether it's G-Shocks or, you know, just the regular classics or vintage. They are very busy in producing a lot of watches, which as a collector is really awesome because it makes it exciting, right? And again, they're not all expensive. They come at different price points. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's a nice G-Shock. It's like $5,000. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I gotta put that away. But oh, there's this watch that's it's only like $100 bucks. Okay, that's nice. You know, that's affordable, and for the value, it's nice to be able to build a collection where obviously these are not luxury watches, you know, but still you have a nice range, and all the different styles, you know, the variety. It makes it so that your watch collection doesn't all look the same. It's not just all divers. It's just not all little digitals. It's not all like the G-Shock rugged one. It's not all metals. It's not, you know, it makes it so that with Casio, they have such a big variety of watches that, you know, you're bound to find something that you like this one. I remember when I first saw this watch, whew, boy, I think this is the, what is this, the EFV 100. Oh, when I saw this watch, I love the black and the little yellow mark on it. Oh, that's sweet right there. Reminds me of my school colors, that's why. But this is a nice watch. It's a little bit big for my tiny wrist, Let me put it back on. But I love that they have all these varieties. This one comes in a lot of, oh gosh, sticky wrist. This one comes in a lot of different colors. It's okay. I'm looking at it right now. It's a little large. It's a little large, but I'm okay with it. You know, it's a little big for my small wrist. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah. But again, I love the fact that when Casio releases watches, they release a lot of new ones, and they also release a lot of different variations, colors, and styles. And as a collector, again, it's just really awesome that Casio is producing a lot of new watches, so that, yeah, you can build your collection and share it and talk about it with a lot of other people. All right, now frustrating point number 3, and I've already touched upon this a little bit earlier. It is the marketing of some of these watches. Sometimes I just don't understand how companies, not just Casio, but other companies, market their products. It may be a cultural difference between Japan and the US. I mean, if you take a look at some of their commercials and their ads, I'm like very shocked when it comes to Casio. I guess for me, just because a watch is smaller doesn't mean that it has to be pink or shiny, or you gotta have baby G strapped on it. Not that this says baby G on it, but it doesn't have to have baby G strapped on it, you know, for it to be a smaller watch. Like, you can just make smaller size watches of the bigger watches, and that's what something like this one is. This is the GMS 110, which is like the women's version of, I assume, the 110 G-Shock. Because there are a lot of watches, especially as I'm starting to look at G-Shock, there are a lot of watches that I think are designed wonderfully. I mean, they're beautiful, they're amazing, they look nice to me, but they're too big. And it's just like, just you know, just shrink it down, you know, just shrink it down, just shrink it down a little bit, okay, Casio? And not every watch has to be huge, and not every smaller version of every watch has to be women's watch, you know? Like, this could be marketed as just a smaller version of this G-Shock, and it could be for guys, it could be for men. And I think this fits my wrist pretty nicely as someone with a small wrist, and I'm able to wear this style of watch. Now, I know it shouldn't really matter, right? Like, we collect watches, and it shouldn't really matter what you wear. Most people don't even care. They just like, oh yeah, nice watch. What time is it? You know, like, nobody really cares what you wear. But the thing is, I do care, because I have to look at my wrist all day, and that's why for some of the smaller size watches, I don't want to see baby G. You know, like, that's why I'm looking more so at these smaller women's G-Shocks and not the baby G line. Like, some of the baby G line, I think it looks good, except I can't scratch off the baby G, because I know, that's the thing, is I know what that means. You know, baby, I know what that means, and I don't really care if someone says, oh, you're wearing a baby G, isn't it a women's watch? It's like no, nobody really cares, but I know, and that's the thing that I wish could change. So the sizing of these watches, I think, is great for someone with a small wrist. Let's just say a guy with a small wrist, again, 6 1/4, 2 inches from here to here. I think the women's sizes, for especially like these G-Shocks, I think they're spot on. But the problem is some of the colors. You know, like, when they make a lot of these watches for like the women's version of the G-Shocks, I'm noticing now, why do they have to always be bright colors like pink and shiny and, you know, and yellow and baby blue and green, and like, if you just look at the colors between the two, it's like, I don't understand why the women's watches have to always be that. Like, there's not often a lot of like neutral colors, white and grays and blacks and, you know, blues, or, you know, those colors are okay too. You know, you can have your pinks and yellows and shiny stuff, but just, you know, maybe just tone it down with some other options that maybe are more unisex. I wish there were more options, because I think there's this gap in the market. It's like, you either get the huge thick G-Shocks, or you get like the women's colors. And I think what that means, a lot of people are either afraid to get into G-Shock, or they look at their G-Shock and it's just thick, and they're like, ugh, but this is it, right? I gotta get a G-Shock square, and it's like, oh, I just gotta wear it, or oh, I gotta get the Casio, and I gotta get the Frogman, or you know, I gotta get all these watches because it's G-Shock. But, you know, it's huge, right? I mean, I would love to be able to wear some of those watches, just you know, a little bit smaller, and maybe not with baby G on them. But just to close, I really like Casio. as a brand. I took a lot of time to think about, as I was getting into watches, what brand I wanted to focus on, or what kind of watch collector I wanted to be. And for me, brand was the most important thing. I wanted to be able to grow with the brand, explore the brand. And you know, there's a lot of different watch companies out there, particularly the ones like Seiko, Citizen, that I looked at. Even Timex, I looked at seriously. But when it came down to it, I love all the things that I mentioned, you know, more so than the things that are frustrating, because I'm finding these frustrating as I'm collecting these watches. I really like Casio as a brand. I think they have a lot to offer. Again, value is amazing, different price points, and I will say I never thought I'd get into G-Shock, but yeah, now I've sort of expanded into G-Shock, and that's the fun part of Casio to me. A lot of room for growth as a watch collector is, you know, you can start off with some of the digital ones, you know, the nice ones, and you could be happy with, you know, these just collecting digital ones that are, you know, relatively cheap, but again, good value. Or you can move on to like some of the Edifice brand, or maybe some of the divers. You can move on to some of the more unusual watches, like this field watch. You got vintage look, or you can get into G-Shocks, and for me, that's sort of where I'm at. I'm looking at G-Shocks now, and I'm sure it'll move on to different phases. Again, that Oceanus line is looking really nice, but just the jump between G-Shock and Oceanus, at least some of the more affordable G-Shocks, and then Oceanus, the bottom is it's a little pricey. At least the ones that I like in the Oceanus line, but there are some nice ones, and who knows, maybe one day I'll expand to that. But that's something that I'm looking forward to, and growing with Casio and the brands they make. So yeah, those are the reasons why I love Casio and am a little frustrated sometimes as a Casio collector. But overall, I'm really happy with where I'm going with this hobby, question mark, watch collecting. I guess it's a hobby, but sometimes it doesn't seem like it. But yeah, it's a humble collection, but a collection that I'm proud of because of the watches. I think about the watches and the circumstances that I got them, and sometimes watches just look cool. All right, well, thanks for watching.